talk to us about your reaction when you heard of the passing, and also how you first got involved in covering Mandela.
Well, I had the fortune of being at the London School of Economics in the 60s at the right place at the right time, where the ANC people had come into exile. And in my class was a remarkable woman, Ruth First, who became sort of my mentor about South Africa. And I was recruited by the ANC to go into South Africa. They couldn't get their people in because so many of them were in prison and well known to the security police. So people from England, what were then called the London recruits, were sent into South Africa on various missions. I was one of them, naive perhaps to do this, unaware really of the consequences that awaited me if I was caught. But I went anyway as an act of solidarity. I went to the funeral of the late Chief Luthuli, who was the leader of the ANC before Mandela, and I got an insight into how vicious the apartheid system was, how pervasive it was in people's lives. It wasn't just about race. It was about controlling people as labor, as a labor force in South Africa. This was always about economics, not just pigment. And Americans make the mistake of, confusing what was happening in South Africa with the civil rights movement in America, where people fought to have the Constitution applied to them. In South Africa, there was no Constitution, and there were no rights for a majority, not a minority, of people. And so I experienced that up front and personally, in a way. But it also kind of got me involved deeply in South Africa. And years later, not only did I write about South Africa and was one of the organizers of the Africa Research Group in Boston, but I became active in a project called Sun City, Artists Against Apartheid. And, just to supplement what Randall Robinson told you earlier, this was not all about lobbying Congress. This was about informing America about what was happening. And in some cases, it was cultural figures, 58 of the world's top artists who indicted the system of forced relocation in South Africa. That's what Sun City was all about. It was a part of an effort to promote a cultural boycott alongside an economic boycott. And it was very successful and worldwide in its impact. And I think that was important. And then, I helped start the TV series South Africa Now that ran for 156 weeks, every week in the United States, reporting on South Africa through the eyes of South Africans. It was their story.
On PBS.
And it was on public television stations. PBS never really officially supported it, but many stations did. It was also on in 40 countries around the world throughout Southern Africa. So it actually had a tremendous impact of bringing the message of the democratic movement to a world audience. And I think that was very critical. And then, of course, the documentaries. And most recently, I was in South Africa documenting the making and the meaning of this new movie, Mandela: A Long Walk to Freedom. And that movie will be in 2,000 cinemas in America starting Christmas Day. It's a very dramatized, but important film about Mandela in the way that the movie Gandhi was about Gandhi, but it leaves a lot out. And that's why the producers of the movie asked me to write this book, Madiba A to Z, The Many Faces of Nelson Mandela, to talk about the rest of the story. And I did so by interviewing over 150 people who worked with Mandela, who were part of this whole struggle. And what I got from them was not only admiration for him, but also a perspective that this was not just one man, but a movement that pulled this off, this change. And it was a movement that was organized in a democratic manner from the bottom up, not the top down. So, even though we revere and admire Mandela, we have to also pay respect to the people of South Africa who suffered all these years, torture, imprisonment, death, fighting apartheid.
Speaking of Nelson Mandela being in prison for 27 years, freed in 1990. In February 1995, over 1,000 former political prisoners led by Nelson Mandela returned to Robben Island, where he was incarcerated. Let's go to that clip from your film, Danny Schechter, Prisoners of Hope. Here, Mandela talks about his own experience being imprisoned on Robben Island.
Well, human beings, have got the ability to adjust to anything. This cell was small, but we appreciated that privacy that we enjoy in comparison to our colleagues who were far more than ourselves. Because in my section, the numbers fluctuated between 20 and 30. And at least we had privacy. You could be in your cell the whole night. You are able to sit down and think. And you could stand away from yourself and look at your performance before you went to jail. Jail walls can never prevent you identifying yourself with the struggle outside prison. And even though we were behind bars, all of us and the leaders of the ANC outside were actually heroes.
That's President Nelson Mandela being interviewed by Danny Schechter. We also are joined now by Father Michael Lapsley in Cape Town, South Africa, director of the Institute for Healing of Memories. Previously worked for the Trauma Center for Victims of Violence and Torture in Cape Town, South Africa, which assisted the Commission for Truth and Reconciliation, headed up by Archbishop Desmond Tutu. In April 1990, Father Michael Lapsley received a letter bomb that blew off both his hands. He opened a magazine. It destroyed one of his eyes, burned him severely. The bomb was an assassination attempt by the then apartheid government of South Africa. This was after Nelson Mandela was released from prison. Father Lapsley's new book is called Redeeming the Past, My Journey from Freedom Fighter to Healer, which Nelson Mandela commented on. Father Lapsley, your response to the passing of Nelson Mandela?
Well, thank you, Amy. I think it's not just we South Africans, but I think it's a day of deep grief. At the same time, it's a day of immense gratitude and celebration of this extraordinary contribution. So in a way, we have to say we're thankful that he can rest, although we were never ready to let go of him. So it is an extraordinary end of an epoch, but I have a sense that from this day, in a renewed way, we South Africans will take the spirit of Nelson Mandela, the spirit of self-sacrifice, of commitment to building a world in which our common humanity is of utmost importance. So very, very, very mixed feelings. And I think the nation is feeling a little bit overwhelmed at the moment because in a way we were prepared, in another way we were never going to be prepared for the end of this era of Nelson Mandela passing. The program reflects that he was a global icon. He inspired the world. And I think that inspiration will actually continue for not only decades, but for centuries to come.
And Danny, I'd like to ask you what people here in the United States can learn, progressives and social activists, from the legacy of Mandela.
Well, first of all, Mandela was a great believer, in working with the collective, working together with others, not just kind of stealing all the attention. He wasn't a celebrity in the sense that we accord that to prominent people, but always spoke in terms of others, and I think that's important. The second thing is that his movement was very decentralized on some levels in various communities, labor unions and youth groups and religious organizations. So it brought together lots of different people from different places to find common cause. But they also did have a structure in place, and that structure enabled them to run an election that they had never done before and win an election. That's important. What we in America don't really fully appreciate, I think, is not just that he was elected president and what a great victory it all was, but the tremendous pressures South Africa was under from white capital, from American business, to try to restrain the reforms that they wanted to put in place. And that led to a kind of neoliberalism, which is in effect in South Africa, which has limited their ability to fight poverty, limited their ability to deal with a lot of issues, which has led to the kind of corruption that we've seen in many other places in the world.